Hey folks, this is Colin Richards, president and founder of Lord & Richards, and I'm excited to be talking to you today. And in this segment, we're going to be answering another question that really has to do with advice and counsel. The question is, what's good about Dave Ramsey's advice? What's good about it? I'm a positive person, and I want to find out what are the things that we can learn, right? We call it spitting out the bones, not necessarily throwing the baby out with the bathwater and various other cliches. How can we learn from Dave Ramsey? I know a lot of my clients have appreciated advice over the years, and I want to tell you there's a couple things I really do appreciate it. Number one, Dave really pushes people to be givers. I love that. Dave pushes people to be givers, and we all, as citizens of God's kingdom, should put a high priority on giving and being blessing. He also believes in an emergency fund, and this is really step number one in achieving financial independence, to develop an emergency fund or a short-term reserve. Here at Lord & Richards, as we help our clients through the financial independence review process to determine if you're ready to go, if you can retire financially independent without worry, we're going to always make sure you have a 3 to 6 month reserve or more if you've got something big coming up like a wedding or a car purchase or something like that. But I also appreciate, thirdly, that Dave doesn't like debt. Dave Ramsey doesn't like debt. I think that's clear, right? When you ring a bell on the show and people get out of debt, that's a pretty big issue for you. But what I have a problem with is that Dave does not differentiate with debt. All debt bad. And of course, there's some biblical foundation to that, right? The borrower's servant to the lender, right? Don't get into debt. But I think we're talking about a difference between people who, in the biblical context, by indebting themselves, ensnared themselves, right? Versus someone who uses debt for expansion, growth, and capital. Now, it doesn't mean that it's a risk-free situation, and debt of any kind involves risk. But there may be a calculated risk involved with certain kinds of debt. Let me agree, first of all. I agree with Dave. It's good to get out of unsecured or consumer debt for the most part, right? Those credit cards, all of those things. Now, if there's a big pile of debt, you've got to tackle it properly. And I don't agree with Dave's snowball that puts the priority on closing out small accounts and then bigger accounts. That's a psychological boost. It's a little bit of a dopamine hit when you pay off a credit card. But financially, it's better to work off the debt on your high-interest debt first. Get your high-interest debt paid off first. I also agree it's good to get out of debt on depreciating items for the most part. Sometimes a client can be real estate or, in this case, if we're talking about depreciating items, car rich, cash poor. Cash is king, folks, and using your cash may not always be in your best interest. It's wise to have cash on hand in case of emergencies, but also in case of really big things that might go beyond an emergency fund. So some depreciating items might be good, right? Think about a car, right? If you borrow for a car at a very low rate, what you're actually doing is exercising the principle we call at Lord & Richards OPM, other people's money. You say, well, I thought all debt was bad. Well, if you're taking money that you could invest and potentially earn a higher rate of return and using it to pay off money that you could borrow at a very low rate of return, you're missing out on opportunity, or what we might call arbitrage. Now, by the way, let me just pause and say here, I know we're all human beings. We're not robots, right? But I want us to be careful because sometimes our feelings are heavily influenced by counselors who aren't really qualified to give the advice that they give. Also, on appreciating items like real estate, it may well be in your best interest to borrow at a low, reasonable rate with a fixed payment schedule that's defined and that allows you to pay that off over a certain number of years. A good real estate purchase, like a home, will appreciate faster than the interest rate, increasing your net worth. And this is where guys like Dave get it wrong. They take the focus off of your net worth and put it on simply having no debt, right? That needs to be balanced. There's a balance in everything. He also tells folks to pay off their mortgage early. So I'm not excited about that aspect of his debt's advice. If you have a good rate, you're getting that positive arbitrage. And then here's another one. Dave actually believes that you can get 12% in the market. If he does, then why is he telling you to pay off a 2 or 3 or 4% loan when that cash could be used to get a 12% rate? So he's kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Dave also doesn't care about your credit score when it comes to debt. He feels like it's useless, it's pointless, you're going to live by cash. But there are times, again, where you need good credit to participate in the marketplace, whether you're borrowing or not. If you want to get a lease, if you own a business, very often your credit is going to come into play. And there are certain types of credit cards, if used wisely, that will allow you to accrue points, miles, and benefits that can be incredibly valuable, especially if used for a business where they can accrue thousands and thousands of dollars worth of benefits. He seems to imply that there's no way you could ever have the self-discipline to avoid having a balance on that card, but that's not what I see with my clients. I see my clients exercising great care and discipline. So literally, he thinks you should get rid of every kind of debt except your home before you even start saving for retirement. It means pay off the car, pay off student debt, anything else. Here are his steps. Get an emergency fund, paying off all your debt except your home, and then save for retirement. The problem with that is that you're missing out on something that Einstein even commented called compound interest. He called it the eighth wonder of the world. Because if you can begin early saving and setting aside for the long term, as well as having a short-term reserve, then you're going to be way ahead. And missing out on that compounding that you can have in your early years will really come back to haunt you in your later years. You say, well, Colin, that was a little negative. Well, I had a few positive things there to say about Dave. In our next segment, we are going to drill down in the things that I don't like about Dave's advice. What's wrong with Dave's advice? And so I want you to make sure to click ahead to that segment. But you say, well, Colin, I'm kind of at a point where I've gotten out of debt and I'm ready to begin working towards my financial future. I do want to save. I have built up a nest egg. Well, it's time to develop a plan for financial independence. That's a plan to make sure that whether the sun is shining or the clouds are out in the market, you have kind of an economic bubble around you and you're able to enjoy retirement without worry. That's what we're doing for our clients every single day. And I'd love to have a conversation with you about it today.